Okay, so Twitter rolled out a new disinformation policy, and it was announced late last week, and I want to read exactly what the Twitter spokesperson who announced this, the head of safety and integrity at Twitter, tweeted in order to make this announcement. He said, "We're focused on ensuring people have access to credible information when it matters most. Today, we are introducing a new crisis misinformation policy to help protect the conversation on Twitter, starting with a focus on the Russian invasion of Ukraine." Now, this is different, by the way, than their other misinformation policy, because this one has to do with events as they unfold, a crisis misinformation policy. Keep that in mind. He said, especially during moments of crisis, misleading claims can go viral while the truth is still asleep. To help address these dynamics, we won't amplify or recommend potentially misleading content about crises as soon as we find credible evidence a claim may be misleading. Oh, it may be misleading. Not definitive proof that it is, but it may be misleading, and they're gonna shadow ban you. He says, for harmful misleading claims that have been debunked by multiple authoritative sources, we'll prioritize placing them behind a prominent warning message. He shows a screenshot of the warning message. He then says, by the way, don't you wonder who his authoritative sources are? Places maybe like the World Health Organization, but we'll get to that in a moment. He says, our approach to mitigating the effects of harmful misinformation continues to move behind the leave up, take down binary of moderation. We've seen that not amplifying harmful content can reduce its spread by 30 to 50%. We'll continue to invest in these interventions going forward. So think about that for a second. Before we even get into the authoritative sources or how this is going to be applied, think about the impact of Twitter's algorithm. If this guy from Twitter is admitting that when they shadow ban a source of information, which means shadow banning a tweet, which means shadow banning your words, which means shadow banning you, it can reduce its dissemination by 30 to 50%. That's how powerful the Twitter algorithm is. It's not a free market. It's not a meritocracy. 30 to 50% is how effective their algorithm deliberately censoring information that they don't like is. So he includes in his tweet thread a link to Twitter's official announcement on their blog. And this is what they say. This is how we know what type of event they will apply these new crisis misinformation policies to. Twitter says, around the world, people use Twitter to find reliable information in real time. During periods of crisis, such as situations of armed conflict, public health emergencies, bing, 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 that's the one I care about, and large-scale natural disasters, access to credible, authoritative information and resources is all the more critical. Today, we are introducing our crisis misinformation policy, a global policy that will guide our efforts to elevate credible, authoritative information and will help to ensure viral misinformation isn't amplified or recommended by us during crises. In times of crisis, misleading information can undermine public trust and cause further harm to already vulnerable communities. So, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt this for a second. There are so many euphemisms in this announcement. It's making my skin crawl here. So first of all, if this is a global policy and they're only going to rely on authoritative sources, who exactly are these sources? Does Twitter consider only the World Health Organization to be an authoritative source? Do they consider the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, since that's a global organization, to be an authoritative source? Maybe do they consider the Chinese communists to be an authoritative source? Because the Chinese communists certainly think they know about COVID more than any other country in the world. Who exactly are these authoritative sources? And what happens if on a global scale, a so-called authoritative source contradicts a dictatorship like China? What if the United States, the CDC at the United States contradicts the World Health Organization or the Chinese Communist Party? What happens? Who's the authoritative source? This is so incredibly creepy. It's also really controlling and manipulative because of this phrase. Misleading information can undermine public trust. So we know what they mean by that phrase. They mean when they say undermine public trust, it means if you have any questions about the vaccine that we want you to take, then you, the public, aren't trusting us. You are requiring information and data that we don't want you to have. We will tell you what you need to know, and therefore what you need to know will inform your decision whether to get this vaccine. And of course, the only choice based on our information will be for you to get it. That's what they actually mean by that phrase. So as you can see, this is very creepy, very draconian, very, very anti-free speech, but anti-freedom in general. They say, alongside our existing work to make reliable information more accessible during crisis events, this new approach will help to slow the spread by us of the most visible misleading content, particularly that which could lead to severe harms. Now, of course, in Twitter's world, in Twitter's mind, the philosophy of those who are writing this nonsense at Twitter, not getting the vaccine or opposing lockdowns, is causing other people severe harms. So this is just the ideological strategy that Twitter has now harnessed in order to stop real information, true information, if it contradicts the narrative of places like the CDC or Fauci or the Biden administration or the UN or the World Health Organization or maybe even the Chinese communists about public health emergencies. So again, this type of algorithmic manipulation impacts what you're saying. It can stifle what you're saying by up to 50% reach. That's really, really significant.